S- Welcome to Science Talks. Now we will discuss the following topics: New geospatial sector policy of India. Why is the liberalization of geospatial data needed, and why the government is now deregulating the geospatial sector? We will discuss in that. Universal immunization program, and what is the current status, and from when it has started to the what is the current status of the universal immunization program by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and how many people have been getting immunization this, and what is the coverage we will discuss. Transuranic elements, Einsteinium, why Einsteinium is in news. And Stardust 1.0 using the biofuel. See, Stardust 1.0 is basically a launch vehicle using the biofuel rather than the rocket fuel. We will discuss in detail that in the topic. These all the topics like Einsteinium and Stardust 1.0 are also there in our previous episodes. But if you find it comfortable, you can please watch them. WHO has 3 variants has been discovered: UK variant, Brazil variant, and South African variant. We will discuss it with names. Kapila campaign on intellectual property rights by Education Ministry. Furnace oil or fuel oil. It is basically to know in short, these furnace oil or fuel oil can be made from the crude oil distillation residues. The residues that we obtain after the crude oil distillation process is called furnace oil. And the next topic is digital intelligence unit. See, digital intelligence unit is a kind of a complaint or a complaint redressal mechanism for the cyber security point of from the cyber security point of view regarding the transactions or fraud, cyber frauds, etc. It is basically introduced. This digital intelligence unit has been created by our telecom ministry. And next is NIC Sanders messaging app. Next is NIC Sanders messaging app. It is open for all. It is basically like same features as WhatsApp, Telegram, all the messaging kind of stuff you can available in the National Informatics Center's Sanders app. NASA's Perseverance rover, and what is the Mars mission of the NASA? We will see in detail about the Perseverance rover, and also what are all the type of payloads available in the rover, and also what are the future missions of NASA, and also in detail what are the experiment or what are the payloads, indirectly payloads, or what we can say experiment carrying instruments in the NASA Perseverance rover. And next is Go Electric campaign. Go Electric campaign, and what is about the Go Electric campaign, and also news media and digital platforms mandatory bargaining code of Australia. There is an issue between the tech gains and also the journalism lobby of Australia, so we will discuss that in detail. And also Turkey unveils the space program. What is the space program of Turkey, and which country, what is the rank of the Turkey country in the space ambitions. India's new social media rules. India's new social media rules. What is that with respect to Twitter as well as other social media platforms? India has recently launched social media rules, which includes mostly basically of data regulation or data localization, or also against abuse, childhood and pornographic abuse. So it is with respect to the anti-government and also the anti-social elements. And augmented reality head-mounted display systems for Indian Army. See, the augmented reality is basically most purpose is for faster communication, for faster calculations, higher computation speed, and also it will be helpful in decision making to the army. So this augmented reality head-mounted display systems for our Indian Army. And also we will discuss in detail about the budget 2021 for the science and technology, and what are the things that have been launched in the science and technology field in our budget 2022, Indian budget 2021 to 2022. How much allocations has been done to the Ministry of Science and Technology. And also Unani Day, and national conferences Unani is held on Unani Day, and what actually the Unani consists of, and what is the medical practice or the theory in general of Unani when compared to the Ayurveda, and when compared to the practical modern scientific medicine, we will discuss. And also detailed genomic map of malaria vector. Why the genomic map of malaria vector is helpful. And next is a National Ayush Mission. National Ayush Mission, we can call it as NAM. So what actually the Ayush Mission is for, and what actually it wants, what is the goal of the Ayush Mission. And next is Hunter syndrome. So the Hunter syndrome, we will discuss the Hunter syndrome. And also Vigyan Jyoti program. Vigyan Jyoti program is basically for empowerment of women in the STEM field, and all ISRO Science and MOU, like Indian alternative Google Maps. See, this have to be linked with the first topic, that is geospatial sector of India. So ISRO MOU and Indian alternative Google Maps. So if you liberalize the geospatial sector, obviously the private firms will there is an increase in the geospatial sector, and an alternative Google Maps, indigenous alternative Google Maps can be developed. Laws governing the cyber world, and what are the laws available with the Indian government to tackle the cyber world, cyber frauds, and also the pornographic and also anti-social elements. And also lithium, what is the importance of that, and why the lithium metal has came in the news because of the recent discovery of the lithium deposits in Karnataka. So that is also one of the aspect. And ethylene glycol, CH2OH taken twice, ethylene glycol, and it is also called as antifreeze. So why it is in use, and what are the properties of the ethylene glycol? Basically it acts as an antifreeze. And what is antifreeze? And also the composite raw materials, what is mean by the composite raw materials? So these are the topics we will discuss in today's session. So our first topic is new geospatial sector policy of India. Why is the liberalization of the geospatial data needed? See, till now our government has observed the geospatial sector as a strategic one and also the security and defense oriented one. But the liberalization or deregulation of the geospatial sector in India is you can be indicated. The new geospatial sector policy is an indicator of deregulation of the geospatial sector in India. So why this liberalization of the geospatial data is needed? See, because what actually the term geospatial is nothing but, see, geo is a geographical location, and when you get an information when you get from a particular geographical location in a specified time, so time and land, specific geography, and also the information. So when you interlink all this, you get a geospatial data. Geospatial data may be of many types. So this geospatial data can be useful in urban public transport because of the upgrading, because of many startups have been using this map technology. See, we use Google Maps because it is basically with respect to the US based GPS technology, but our indigenous mapping system must be existed with the help of IRNSS of ISRO. So an indigenous global geospatial technology or indigenous global mapping technology is required to show the thrust in the scientific field of scientific temper or scientific developments in India. So this can be helpful in the urban transport and urban public transport in many startups. And see, till now the government has much regulated this geospatial sector, like providing the APIs of this geospatial thing, like mapping, to only APIs to the only the licensed or only the permitted to only few of the specific industries which are nothing to do with the strategic thing. But now the government has brought the geospatial sector policy, and it has deregulated the entire geospatial sector by giving a push to the startup ecosystems, MSMEs. So it can be helpful in the urban public transport, logistics, e-commerce. So it gives a thrust, providing a thrust. And also the like automated drones, for example, you can see in the Kashmir. So automated drones, and government see, the government is waiting till from a decades. We have the private sector or the market is waiting for decades to get the geospatial sector policy of India. That is, till now it has not been liberalized, but now it has been liberalized. So Department of Science and Technology has brought a guidelines. So these guidelines for the geospatial sector has been in discussion. This geospatial data is basically, as already discussed, it is about the location info, basically about the location information, and to end the red tapeism and to acquire and produce the map data. So see, entire thing we have not, the government is not liberalizing, but only a negative, but it has been reserved a negative list of sensitive information, like it can be security, defense, or anti-national or some info. So this negative list or negative list of sensitive information is under the government regulation. So it obviously such minimum regulation is required. So it has the government has also allowed the foreigners or the foreign investments to use the data of India for only for serving the Indians, but not for the other purposes. That is, the foreign investments are allowed, and also also sell and transfer or transact our Indian data with the foreign companies, but only for the purpose of serving the Indians, that is Indian users, but not the foreign users. And also no reuse or sell such map data externally. And also it is basically like a private self certification. So end red tapeism is nothing but to the private people have the private firms has to self certify that the use of this geospatial data is for the useful purposes. So thus this policy increases the independence of the private firms in using the geospatial data. So why actually the geospatial sector should be liberalized? See, those are many reasons, because in today's world the economy is driven by the app market. That is, anything or the demand or from the consumer to the business end, or a business to consumer, or business consumer to consumer, it is all the transactions between the firms and the consumer are done in the digital space, that is basically in the apps. So increase of these apps, it requires obviously there is a, I think, fact that nearly 60% or 60 to 70% of the data that is generated is geospatial. So hence you can see the importance of the geospatial technology. So the increase of the apps like Google Earth, Maps and Map My India of an Indian firm, so these apps can be helpful in the startups, and these APIs can be also helpful in research for the academic purposes and many other purposes. So it increases the private PPP investments, public-private partnership investments, and it gives a thrust to the startups and e-commerce apps and so on. So this is all about the geospatial sector policy of India. And next, coming to the universal immunization program 2021, why it is in use. See, the Minister of Health and Family Welfare has launched the intensified mission Indradhanush 3.0. So first we have to know about what actually is the Indradhanush mission. See, this intensified Indradhanush mission 3.0 is basically an upgradation plan, or we can call it as those who are reached or unreached or left out in the previous Indradhanush missions. This intensified Indradhanush missions basically reach the unreached. And also there is a separate portal has been developed. Intensified Mission Indradhanush 3.0 portal has also been put up to facilitate for this for facilitating the data and also the follow-up of medical facilities of the people. So this IMI Mission Indradhanush, intensified Mission Indradhanush, has kept an ambitious target of nearly reaching the 90% full immunization coverage in our country. The coverage basically the beneficiaries are children and the pregnant women and also the unvaccinated people during the COVID-19 lockdown. And also it gives, this Mission Indradhanush gives the free vaccines to the 12 life-threatening diseases. See, these 12 life-threatening diseases are vaccine preventable. So if we prevent those vaccine preventable diseases which are life-threatening, it will be a boost. It will give boost in the non-communicable diseases burden. It will reduce the non-communicable disease burden of our India. Our country nearly faces nearly 1/3, 2/3, you can say nearly 66% of our deaths in India are from non-communicable disease. So non-communicable disease burden is very high in India when compared to the world. So this immunization program of the 12 vaccine preventable diseases can give a thrust to or can improve the health conditions of the people. So the beneficiaries we have already seen, it is beneficiaries are children, pregnant women and unvaccinated people, and it gives the free vaccines to the children for the 12 life-threatening diseases. See, let us see what are those 12 life-threatening diseases. Or these are vaccine preventable diseases like tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is like mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria. It is caused by bacteria, and the vaccine given to the tuberculosis is BCG vaccine. And also the DPT vaccine. You know the DPT vaccine. Why the DPT vaccine is given? It is basically of the bacteria, to kill the bacteria, diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus. So these three can be covered with the help of the DPT vaccine, and also available pentavalent vaccine which includes DPT, that is diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus, as well as HBV vaccine. HBV is like hepatitis B vaccine virus, we can call it as, and also influenza type B vaccine. So these are the pentavalent vaccine as well as DPT vaccine available for DPT. So, and also polio virus, like we have two types of polio virus, like OPV and inactivated polio virus. And hepatitis B, it is made of virus and it mainly affects the liver. So HBV vaccine is given. HBV, hepatitis B vaccine. So simple. That is given to the hepatitis B. And pneumonia, which is caused by the bacteria. Pneumococcal conjugate vaccine is available. PCV, you can call it as. Also pneumonia, like influenza type B pneumonia, it can also be given the pentavalent vaccine which is available in the DPT. So the pentavalent vaccine plus pneumococcal conjugate vaccine is given to the influenza and pneumonia and influenza type B. And meningitis, you can see the brain, there is a tumor can be developed in the myelin sheath of the brain, that is the meningitis. It is basically caused by the virus. So the meningococcal vaccine is given. And also the measles and rubella. Measles and rubella is caused by the virus, and the vaccine given to is MMR vaccine. You know that measles, mumps, measles, rubella vaccine. So that is a vaccine given to the measles and rubella. Japanese encephalitis, JE short form, it is caused by the virus, and Japanese encephalitis vaccine is be provided. And diarrhea, rotavirus diarrhea, and rotavirus diarrhea vaccine is given. And it is basically in the case of rotavirus diarrhea, in the case of the rotavirus diarrhea, for the pregnant woman, TT injection plus ORS plus zinc tablets are provided in the rotavirus diarrhea, which is caused by the virus. So this is all about what are the 12 life-threatening diseases. And also when coming to the Mission Indradhanush, see when it is started. See in 2014, like with the new government, change in the government, Modi government has came and it has started 2014. In 2014, Mission Indradhanush has been launched. This Mission Indradhanush basically covers the pregnant women, children, and partial and unvaccinated, all the uncovered pregnant women it covers, and every child with less than 2 years of age it covers. So it is basically an immunization given to the children, pregnant, partial and unvaccinated people against the vaccine preventable diseases. So in the first phase, nearly 4 crore children and 1 crore pregnant women has been given the free vaccines. And after that, see, at a given instance, whole mission cannot be accomplished. It leads a prolonged approach. So again in 2017, intensified Mission Indradhanush has been launched. Here in the previous case, every children has been given the vaccine, but in this intensified Mission Indradhanush, all the things will be specified one, that is specific targets to be attained, like every child with less than 2 years. That is, specificity has been came in intensified Mission Indradhanush 2017. So every child with less than 2 years must be fully vaccinated, and all the uncovered pregnant women must be vaccinated. This IMI 2.0 2020, this is intensified Mission Indradhanush first phase was launched in 2017. Intensified Mission Indradhanush 2.0, that is phase 2, was launched in 2020. This is interministerial coordination is required much in this, like Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Ministry of Child Development, and also Health, Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting for the efficient transactions, and also the data analytics type, and also the follow-ups, like we have a new field like teleportal vaccine. So the upgradation requires interministerial coordination, and also the in a specified districts or region, like unserved pockets and urban slums and migrants. So this is all about the Universal Immunization Program 2021. When coming to the transuranic elements like Einsteinium, ES99, its atomic number is 99, and it is basically transuranic element because atomic number is greater than 92. 92 is of uranium, so atomic number is 99 and it is greater than that of uranium, so it is called as transuranic element. See, this Einsteinium is very unstable. See, the common isotope is obviously unstable. There are also stable isotopes in there, but the most common isotope found in the Einsteinium, Einsteinium 253, is highly unstable and it decays radioactively. So that much radioactiveness is present in that Einsteinium element, such that much traces, only just a traces are present on the earth, and also with our we cannot observe the traces with our naked eye. It requires a formation of a bulk to observe in our observed in the microscope. And also Einsteinium belongs we get Einsteinium from the first Einsteinium has been obtained from the debris of the first hydrogen bomb in 1952. In the 1952, in the Pacific Ocean, we have an detonator called IV mice detonator. It is basically a thermonuclear device. IV mice. IV mice is the name given by the scientist. So the detonation of the thermonuclear devices IV mice has been detonated in the Pacific Ocean, and that is the first instant of detonation of the first hydrogen bomb. After the detonation of the first hydrogen bomb, we got the traces of Einsteinium in 1952. So it is basically can be prepared synthetically and difficult to create, and also highly radioactive. And the common isotope we have already seen, it is ES253, Einsteinium 253, with a very little half-life, because of its high unstableness and also very short half-life. It will be available in traces on the earth, and artificially the decay of Californium 253 can be obtained. It gives the Einsteinium 253. And how the properties, if we see the properties of the Einsteinium, it is a soft, silvery and paramagnetic metal. Soft, silvery and paramagnetic metal, and we can obtain the oxidation states like +3 and +2 in solids. When it is in solid state, mostly it is in solid state, silvery, soft and also paramagnetic, and it rapidly changes, or what we call it, its heat, the heat generated from its decay rapidly damages its crystalline metal structure. See, it is in solid state, crystalline metal structure. The heat generated during the radioactive decay, it destroys the crystalline structure, and that is the reason why it is found in the traces in the small form. And so that is the reason why we obtain this radioactive metal Einsteinium in a very small traces in the earth, on the earth. And because of this highly radioactiveness, the element on the earth is mostly decayed. That is, because of the maximum radioactivity, it obviously disintegrates, and we get only few traces of it, like neptunium and plutonium are the only naturally found substances, radioactive substances. And also laterly you can develop it in neptunium and plutonium can also be developed in the lab, but the first found natural elements are neptunium and plutonium. So that is all about the Einsteinium and its discovery. See, why the Einsteinium came into news is nothing but the scientists have known some of the new properties of the Einsteinium. So it is a soft, silvery, paramagnetic. See, because of its traces, till these years there is new particular properties of the Einsteinium element. Because of the advancements and also because of the pile up of the material, we can able to study this Einsteinium properties. And our next topic is Stardust 1.0. As already discussed, Stardust 1.0 is nothing but a launch vehicle, in the US based launch vehicle. It is basically run on the biofuel instead of rocket fuel. It is approximately 20 feet and it carries a payload of 250 kg. And it actually the weight is 250 kg, and it carries a maximum payload of 8 kg. Because of its maximum payload of 8 kg, it can be only used for a student and budget payloads. And it is the first commercial space launch powered by the biofuel. So that is all about the Stardust 1.0. When coming to the WHO has found 3 variants of COVID-19 virus: UK, Brazil and South Africa. See, the UK variant, we already know that B1.1.1 is a variant that is obtained in the UK, that is the UK variant, and has a N501Y mutation. See, this N501Y mutation in the B1.1.17 of UK variant is also seen in South African variant, that is South African variant has N501Y mutation, and also South African variant also has E484K mutation, but this E484K mutation is absent in the UK variant B1.1.17. So this is all about the South African variant and UK variant. Kapila campaign on intellectual property rights by Ministry of Education or Ministry of Human Resource development previously. See, the Kalam program for intellectual property rights, literacy and awareness campaign is required because the intellectual property rights awareness is must in the higher education institutions. Why? Because IP protection or intellectual property protection of the faculty and student innovations, and also for this awareness, for bringing this awareness, training programs in the higher education institutions, credit based courses on intellectual property rights must be kept. Next, furnace oil or fuel oil. See what actually this furnace or fuel oil means. Furnace oil or fuel oil, crude from the, we already discussed that the residue of the crude oil distillation process we get furnace or fuel oil. See, there is a recent oil spill in the Kerala coast. So Kerala government probes into the leak of this 5000 liters of the furnace oil into the ocean. So from the state owned firm of Titanium Private Limited, Titanium Firm Private Limited, there has been a leakage or incidence of the oil spill. See, we don't know whether the mismanagement of the private firm or due to any natural causes the spillover has occurred, but the government has confirmed the probe into the leak of those 5000 liters of furnace oil. It is from the state owned firm into the sea. Because the primary use of the furnace oil is basically for the steam boiler in power plants and also in abroad ships. So that is the primary use of this furnace oil. See, this furnace oil plus other petroleum fractions gives a desired viscosity and also desired flash points. See, what is this flash point? See, first thing is the lowest flash point is nothing but the lowest temperature at which the vapors ignite using the ignition source. So the lowest temperature at which the vapors ignite using an ignition source is called flash point. So the flash point of the fuel oil is greater than that of an ordinary oils like kerosene and so on. So this kerosene does not belongs to the fuel oil family. So because fuel oil can be obtained from the residues of the distillation process. See, it is also, kerosene is also one of the product of the gas, but the fuel point of the flash point of the fuel oil is much greater than that of a kerosene. So that is one of the major difference between the kerosene and the fuel oil. So that is the thing. And next topic is Digital Intelligence Unit, DIU. See, Digital Intelligence Unit is basically an a grievance redressal mechanism by the Telecom Ministry. This Digital Intelligence Unit deals with the complaints of unsolicited commercial. So this Digital Intelligence Unit deals with the unsolicited commercial communications, UCC. So it is basically nothing but it is an institution or an organization that deals with the financial frauds, payment gateways and also cyber security threats or any frauds that in the digital space, that is frauds in the digital space, can be taken by Digital Intelligence Unit. It deals with the complaints of digital payments and financial fraud cases and so on. Basically the term given for this all type of communications is unsolicited commercial communications. So it also coordinates with various law enforcement agencies, financial institutions and many internet service providers and so on. Basically what UCC, that is unsolicited commercial communications, like spam mails, spam messages, spam calls and so on, that is those are all clubbed together as unsolicited commercial communications. A big concern for the telecoms and Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So to alert or to limit, to keep a check on these financial frauds, misuse of misuse of telecom resources, because the telecom resources using the profile or using the facility given by the internet service providers and also the telecom service providers, optical cable providers, it has been misused for cyber security, financial threats and illicit content and illegal weapon or drug trade. So these all are clubbed together as unsolicited commercial communications. Using this unsolicited commercial communications, much of the illegal activities may be happened or also frauds may be happened. So to capture or to keep a check on this, the Telecom Ministry has created a Digital Intelligence Unit wing. When coming to the NIC SANDES messaging app, see, SANDES is a messaging type of app. During the COVID-19 lockdowns, to give thrust to our indigenous software manufacturing companies, the Indian government has already banned many of the Chinese apps. And also during the COVID-19 lockdowns, there is a tremendous demand increased for the video calling office type of apps like Zoom and so on. So to create an indigenous local app, so to create an indigenous local app, the Indian government under the Ministry of Electronics and Communication Technology, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, there is a wing called National Informatics Center. So this National Informatics Center has created an app called SANDES. Initially this SANDES app was permitted only for the government officials working in designated departments, but later it has extended for all. The main features of this is it can be used for the main feature of this is there is a facility of keep the message confidential option. So if you keep the messages confidential, you cannot transmit or you cannot forward this message. It is only for your personal purpose. So it is as already discussed, it is only for the government officers. Now for all public it has been done. And also when coming to the backup, we can keep backup in this. All the information data that can be stored can be backed, but you cannot transfer the chat history from one to another. So that is the main drawback, or you can say that is a main points features in this app. And also the change of number or email cannot be done. If you want to change a new number, if you want to change to a new number, you can re-register as a new user using the new number. So that is the thing about the NIC SANDES messaging app. And when coming to the next topic, NASA Perseverance rover or NASA Mars mission named with the Perseverance rover 2020. See, this Perseverance rover was started in 2020, means it has been launched in 2020, Perseverance mission of Mars. Basically the main grounding point of this Perseverance rover on the Mars is the landing point, you can call it as. It is a Jezero crater. This Jezero crater is the oldest terrain. Once a river delta existed here in the Jezero crater. So that is the reason why, see, why the NASA will go to this Jezero crater with the past history of river delta, to know about the existing of water or water droplets or water isolates or existence of any organism, living organisms or any life. So it is basically the goal of this mission is to collect the samples of the ancient life, and also to collect the samples of rock and regoliths. Those are nothing but the upper sand layers or rocks present on the Mars surface. So those are the collect the samples of rocks and regoliths. But the Perseverance is NASA's 4th generation Mars rover. See, rover, what is this rover? See, there are three in any space mission. It is depending upon the stages, till which stage your mission has been accomplished. See, suppose the final or the whole complete mission has three parts, that is, first is orbiter, lander and rover. See, orbiter is nothing but, suppose we want to do a Chandrayaan mission or Mars mission or Mangalyaan mission of our India, for example. See, we have to know about the information about the Mars. So what we do, first we orbit our satellites similar to our Indian satellites. We make the mission orbit around the Mars planet. So to orbit around the Mars planet, that which or the instrument or the mission which orbits around the explored planet is called orbiter. The orbiter orbits around the required explored planet, for example here Mars. So this Mars, so this in this Mars mission we have orbiter, that is which orbits around the Mars, and lander. From the orbiter it takes a descending angle, and with deceleration it gradually, with a deceleration and also a descending angle, it takes a descent to the ground or to ground of any particular planet for our exploration. See, this is the descending of the orbiter can be or the lander can be of two types. The lander will be present in the orbiter, and from there the lander will land onto the explored planet. The landing is also of two types. One is soft landing and other is hard landing. That is, soft landing is nothing but basically without damaging caused the soft landing. Hard landing is nothing but using the parachutes, balloon, blubbers to minimize the damage. Basically, that is a hard landing. So two types of landings are there. Finally, the lander lands on the surface of the Mars. From that lander, for the exploration or for the metallurgical purposes, for to know the soil composition, soil properties, what are the elements present in there. So basically the chemical and physical properties to study using the imager satellites, imager payload. Obviously any mission does have the imager payload in it to analyze using the IR spectrum, and also the spectrographic analyzer will also be in the spectrographic analyzer payload will also be present in the mission, Mars mission. So the rover is nothing but from the lander, the rover lands onto the surface of the Mars for the outer space exploration to collect the samples. So it is like a vehicle, flight. Suppose if you want to move from one place to another, you move via flight from place to place. So inside the city you move via car. So similar to like that, lander is nothing but from it's a descending machine that carries the rover, and the rover does all the scientific expeditions like metallurgical operations and soil composition, collecting of soil samples and so on. So that is all about the lander, rover and also orbiter. So this Perseverance rover lands on the Jezero crater to collect about to know about the ancient life samples and also collect the samples of rock and regolith present on the Mars surface. So this Perseverance rover, this Perseverance rover is the NASA's fourth generation Mars rover. See, every mission, for example, this rover also contains some payloads, right? What are these payloads? See, first it contains Ingenuity. This Ingenuity is recently in use. This Ingenuity is a Mars helicopter. See, there is a difference between the helicopter in our Earth, on our Earth, and the helicopter that we design on the Mars atmosphere, because there is a variation in the Earth atmosphere and also the Mars atmosphere. So with respect to the Mars atmosphere, they have created an Ingenuity Mars helicopter. There is a separate big topic on this, the science involved. We will discuss later in the later episodes about this Ingenuity helicopter, Mars helicopter. There is a separate scientific physics principle in the Ingenuity helicopter, and also the MOXIE mission. See, MOXIE is nothing but Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. That is generation of oxygen via carbon dioxide. So that is in simple words, that is about the MOXIE, Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. And also RIMFAX. RIMFAX is Radar Imager Payload for Mars Subsurface Experiment. So basically using the radar, the imagery is being developed, or you can say soil mapping or soil reconstruction, soil imagery. So all in simple terms, see, every term or every payload has its own scientific terminology, and also it has its own specific task to perform. So we have Ingenuity, MOXIE and RIMFAX in the Perseverance rover. So also, not only NASA, there are also many other missions to the Mars. So because why these many missions are on the Mars? Because in the near future, Mars is the only habitable planet after the Earth that we can find or that we can explore in the future. So that is the reason why. And also one hint or one note, important tip that I am giving: Mars is in the Goldilocks zone of the our solar system, or Mars is in the Goldilocks zone of our Sun. Goldilocks zone is nothing but the habitable zone of our planets, or where the living exists, living beings, or the living is possible, life is possible, you can call it as that can be seen. There are many Goldilocks zone inside in our galaxy, and between the galaxy to galaxy the Goldilocks zone varies. For example, PSK 1.137, that galaxy, PS 1.137 galaxy, that has different Goldilocks zone. And also like Substar 247 P35S, that also has a different Goldilocks zone. See, many galaxies has its own Goldilocks zones. There are other missions to Mars, like NASA has its own missions. Like in see, we will classify those missions in terms of the lander names. NASA lander name is there is a Mars Insight lander. We have already discussed that what is the difference between the lander, rover, and also the orbiter. So NASA has a lander called Mars Insight and a Curiosity rover and three orbiters: Mars Reconnaissance orbiter and Mars Odyssey orbiter and Maven orbiter. So these are the missions of the NASA. India has its orbiter named Mangalyaan 1. There has also been a movie named on this, Akshay Kumar's movie on this Mars orbiter. India's Mangalyaan, and EU has two orbiters, Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas. So these are the two orbiters of EU. And China, like Tianwen 1, recently news, Tianwen 1 orbiter, and also UAE is also has orbiter Hope. That also will discuss Hope mission of in the previous episode. There is a Hope mission orbiter of UAE. Next, the Go Electric campaign. See, Go Electric campaign, there is a current increase in the trend or increasing the push by the government on the sustainable fossil fuels, that is clean green energy. About e-mobility, electric vehicles, a shift from fossil-based fuel to the electric based energy-based vehicles. See, obviously, to decrease the import demand, that is obvious question. To import the fossil energy demand by the India, and also reduce the import bill by the country, and also the improvement decrease the carbon emissions or GHG emissions. So this can be obtained by shift from current fossil-based energy to the clean and green energy. See, in clean and green energy, we have renewable energies and also hydrogen-based new technological energy, hydrogen-based fuel cell electric vehicles. That also we will discuss in the later episodes in the of the science talks. So the green electric campaign is basically to promote the e-mobility of electric vehicles. Clean and safe electric cooking is also a part of this green electric campaign. Electric cooking is also a part, because not only the vehicle transport sector, whatever the energy that we are using from the fossils, that we have to shift from this electric source. See, electric source is the only source that if we use, see, the fossil is nothing but fossils. We are the source is the carbon intense, and also the output is also carbon emitted. So both the source as well as the output of the emission is also carbon intensive, or the GHG depends upon the GHG emissions. But whereas in the electric side, electric vehicle is nothing but a carrier, you can say. If you generate the source of the electricity or the source of the power from a clean and renewable sources, the electricity can also be the clean. So it's in simple ways, the technology, it depends mainly on the technology. Electric is mainly depends upon the technology. That is, if the source is of a green non-fossil fuel based, then the output can also be a non-fossil fuel based clean energy, that is non-GHG emission power or fuel. So Bureau of Energy Efficiency of Ministry of Power, this Bureau of Energy Efficiency every year conducts Go Electric campaign. See, it is also has Saksham campaign, and also like Petroleum Ujjwala Yojana. Many have been conducted by this Bureau of Energy Efficiency of Ministry of Power. So basically, this electric campaign is to support the state designated agencies as well as the power sector agencies to give awareness to the public to the use of electric vehicles and electric fuel. So electric fuel is different from the fossil based fuel. You can I'll give you a fact that, see, the fossil based fuel, the import bill is nearly 8 lakh crore import bill every year is due to the fossil based fuel import. So but when compared to the fossil fuel, electric fuel is, when compared to the fossil fuel, this electric based fuel is cost effective and also reduce emissions and indigenous. So these are all the advantages of the electric fuel. And also we need an energy transition from to the low carbon economy, and this can be only achieved with the help of green power from agri waste, biomass, and so on. So this is all about the Go Electric campaign. Next thing is news media and digital platforms mandatory bargaining code of Australia. See, there has been a recent news or trend that is going on. There is a clash, we can call, between the government of Australia, including the news agencies, news or journalistic agencies, with the tech gains like Facebook, Google, and so on. See why the rift has been taken place between the government and this tech gains, because whatever the journalist or Australian government is demanding is to pay the royalty or to pay for the news content that has been generated by the news channel agencies in the Australia, or the journalistic agencies in the Australia. Those links, when shared in the Facebook or the Google, those all the Facebook or these tech gains are diverting the traffic in diverting the traffic from the original news content source website or the original source provider to their to the Facebook or the Google. So this is the main problem, that is diversion of traffic is happening to the Facebook, that is Facebook is generating or it is using the content of the service provider or the news channel or the news firms. It is using the content of the news firms in its own micro blogging platform like Twitter or Facebook or Google, and it is increasing its traffic base. So so this has created a rift between the Australian government and also the tech gains. Also this type of clash has already seen in European Union and also the France. We can also observe this in France between the Facebook and we can call it as Facebook Apple gaps, GATS, Google, Apple, Facebook, and also Amazon. So this has there is a law regulating the royalty content and also the privacy, intellectual property rights, and EU GDPR data protection regime is a global data protection regime is also been European data protection regime is also applied in the EU, and the government has made a fruitful, or we can call a bargaining has been done between the France government or the European Union government and between their governments and the tech gains. The bargaining has been done and also the royalty and the payments has been settled. But the problem is in Australia, the Facebook now is threatening the Australian government that it may ban the news, or it may ban the updated satellite content or the news, or if we not going to take the customers data, we cannot able to provide the customized or specific location specific content to the customers. So it is basically the threat or a cold war is going on between the tech gains and the Australian government. So the government of Australia is basically aim is that it wants to build, it already bought a framework for negotiations and arbitrations between the tech gains and also the news generating media platforms, and also government appointed arbitrator to decide the price of the royalty that to be shared between the news or journalism. News media gets a fairly remuneration. That is the main goal of Australian government, and to sustain the public interest in journalism. So the media should pay for the journalism. That is a whole concept behind this bargaining code of Australia. That's nothing to worry about. And Turkey unveils a space program. See, Turkey president, you have to know, basically Turkey unveils a space program. So who is the president of Turkey? He's a famous, and he also got elected recently, Tayyip Erdogan. There is also the France and France, German, Italy governments has been opposing frequently about the election malpractices that has been done in electing the Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkey president. This Erdogan has become the president, and he has unveiled a new space program. That is the target or the goals of this space program is reach the moon by 2023, and develop a spaceport, and create a global brand of Turkey as a space related activities. And also by in 2018 Turkey is recently started developing the space programs. Also it is far beyond, or we can call it as it is in a nuanced stage, in a nascent stage. Turkish space agencies like TUA, Turkish Space Agency, has established in 2018. So you can obviously see the contrast between the US, USSR, India, China. Those space activities or space outer space activities has been started since 1950s after the World War has been ended. So 1960s, 1961 our ISRO, 1969, 1971 DRDO. So these are all are the in the 1990s in the during the Cold War era. But the Turkey has recently started its astronomical space agencies, Turkish space agencies TUA, satellite based brand want to develop as a brand. So it's okay, well and good, because of the new president of Erdogan, the Turkey unveils a space program. That's well and fine with the tune. And also India's new social media rules, that to be point to be discussed. See, there's a this topic we will go in depth, because there is a new social media rules. See, till now what actually the government has done with the social media platforms, there are many social media platforms that are not regulated in India, and also there is no data localization laws that are available in the country, because this because of the lacunae in the data localization laws and also data privacy and protection laws. There has been a many demands from the activists towards the government to bring a data privacy law similar to that of in the lines of the European General Data Protection Bill (GDPR) of European Union. So, but the government has still pending bill in the Parliament due to the various. Obviously, the discussions should to be happen in the Parliament, and also the parliamentary currently the bill is in the parliamentary standing committee's observation. So after the recommendations, a draft final proposal will become, a white paper will be released based on that, and also again the consultations are still ongoing on. We can see the recommendations of Sri Krishnan committee has also been taken, and also VS Sharma committee. I think VS Verma committee is also given on the privacy issues, and also it should also be taken the guidelines of Puttaswamy judgment, Aadhaar case 2018. So all this should be considered while preparing a draft policy. So apart from that, now India has bought a new social media rules. Why? Because the Twitter and the microblogging platform like Twitter is mainly dominating the field and is encouraging the anti-government protest in the Twitter. So based on that, the new government want to exercise its control or exercise its hand over the microblogging platforms like Twitter and over all the social media platforms. So basically, what is the target of the government? To decrease the anti-social elements or anti-government elements or anti-nationalistic elements, and second one is pornography and child sexual content, and also social communism to develop the anti-social elements. So these are the three things that mean the social media rules must be keep in mind, and also the privacy and the human rights issues. That is obviously that is across the topics that can be seen in any aspect. So Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has recently bought IT Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. See, once again I'm saying IT Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines. See, note this point, intermediary. See, there is a difference between the internet service provider, intermediary, and also the content generator. So these differences we will also see in depth in this episode or in later episodes. So intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. See, there is also ethics code, that is there is also a responsibility of the content provider like social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, to check regularly and to coordinate in harmony with the government principles and manage their policies according to this intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code rules 2021. So let us see what are the features of this intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code 2021. Removal of content from social media. See, in these sessions we will discuss a glance on that. We will not go into the depth. Just for the awareness purpose, we will discuss a glance on that. If you want in-depth details of any of the following topics, please comment on that, and I will make a separate video in detail of the content that you are interested in. So basically, this IT intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code rules 2021 has removal of content from social media. Basically, it removes the content from the social media if and only if certain conditions has met, like if government or court produced, that is if any case has coming to the litigation regarding the privacy or regarding the false misinformation propaganda or false propaganda or election propaganda. So during that such cases, when court mediated, that is when court gives an order, so the originator of the such content, illicit content, content or anti-social content or anti-nationalistic content originator, the originator of the original message can be revealed by the site to the government or court. So that is a thing, kept up. And also related to the four purposes, that is we are already discussed regarding four purposes, like anti-national elements, anti-social elements, pornography, and child and illicit content, and also regionalism and spread of so those are the four things. And also with respect to the country, between the country to maintain the international diplomatic channels, and also to sovereignty and peace and public order. So these are the things that to be kept in mind for removing a content. And should not be the, if the government in these guidelines gives a permission for the content for the social medias like Twitter, Facebook, and so on, it should not be an automatic removal. It leads to a muting of voices, like Article 19. It plunders the Article 19 right to express freedom of speech. So that should not be there. But a content with a due court approval, the originator can be revealed to the government, and also the content can be removed. And 10 categories of prohibited content within the 36 hours it should be removed. And also categorization of social media, like significant social media platforms and regular social media intermediaries. See, no, intermediaries are nothing but if the content, if the content is kept on the intermediary platform, the intermediary does not have to deal with the legal consequences that the user has been put in its site. So intermediary has a safe harbor when coming to the content it provides or the content it generates, because it is not itself is generating the content. Obviously user is uploading the content. So such type of platforms are called as intermediaries, and intermediary have a safe harbor. And like I don't know, I remember exactly. See, I think IT Act, Information Technology Act 2000, Section 69. This Section 69 of the Information Technology Act provides a safe harbor for the intermediaries from the basically it provides immune from the legal protection, immune from the legal consequences. So that is the thing. And categorization of social media codes, we have seen significant regular social media intermediaries. So that is a classification: significant social media intermediaries or else regular social media intermediaries. So that those are the differences. And related to the safe harbor, we have discussed section 69 or 79, I did not exactly. So I think section 69 of the IT Act, there is a safe harbor provided to the intermediaries. An element of due negligence has been also been added, and also the grievance redressal mechanisms, like grievance redressal mechanisms by the intermediaries, like appointing an officer, grievance redressal officer, chief compliance officer, nodal contact person, and monthly report must be generated, like what are the problems you have been got, what are the complaints you received, till what is the progress of the solutions for the complaints. So basically a monthly report, same like a corporate style, has been inculcated in the public grievance redressal mechanisms. So that is the thing. And also the penalties for the companies violating the guidelines and losing the safe harbor if exceeded the penalties, and liable for the punishment. And IT Act provisions also applicable in this media ethics code, and also the IPC provisions also applicable in punishing. And for OTT services, see, OTT services has been much more rampant in current days with the spread of the digital media, and also many abusive or illicit content has been spreading in the OTT, and the regulation has been much minimal. The government regulation is much minimal in the OTT platform. So this can act as an opportunity for regulating the OTT content. So let us look at the OTT services, so rules for the OTT services, like same like social media, same as to the OTT, like grievance redressal officer, and basically more of type of a self-regulation, self-clarification of the classification of the content, like 5 categories, like U by A, less than 18, yes than 14, 14 plus, 18 plus, adult, and so like that. Basically we for a film we have film certification or film chamber or censor board, but for the OTT basically self certification is necessary. And also rules for the digital media mechanisms for the parental lock, like Netflix has provided the parental lock system, and So that is all about the OTT platform. So basically it's a replica of social media to the OTT. And rules for digital news portals, see, that is mainly to control the false propaganda or misinformation campaign. And what Press Council of India, and see those on the similar lines. See, rules for digital news update, like those news which you are generating must be in consonance with the Press Council of India rules or journalistic norms that has been set. So that such program code must be similar to that of a cable TV rules network regulations. So basically to keep a check on every aspect of the thing. And whole concept is self-regulation plus grievance officer. That is the whole idea, with the help of the in the IT intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code rules 2021. So self-regulatory body of publishers must be there, must be established with less than 6 members. A retired Supreme Court and High Court judge should be appointed as a chairman, and eminent member can also be appointed, but less than 3 years, maximum 3 years span. And see, similar to censor board also has some members with a repeated change of people members. And so all the overall idea is to increase the media responsibility for their content, increase the demand for traceability, offices for grievances. And also for example, if you see, I think 2 years back or 5 years back, there was a mass shooting in the New Zealand, and a gunman who is shooting in the New Zealand, he opened a Facebook live streaming. So you can see how much illicit or violence content is being published throughout the borders using the Facebook live stream. So traceability must be increased, and incompatibleness with encryption. See, traceability and encryption always contradicts each other. Like suppose for example, whatsapp is providing an end-to-end encryption. What is end-to-end encryption? It provides a security breach. It protects the network between your your end user, and the other receiver user end. So in between, the network is protected using the encryption. So basically for the traceability is versus encryption is nothing but a protection that the service provider or the user to give to a network. So if you give protection to the network where encryption, does traceability mean anything to this encryption? Because see, if you provide a traceable or originator of the content, what is where there is a encryption in it. Encryption is nothing but a message that you are transmitting should be only visible to the receiver end. But when you are leaking that originator information to other sources like government, you are obviously incompatible. That is the traceability is obviously incompatible with encryption. So there is a dilemma that is existed in between traceability and encryption. And also if you know, regarding the cyber crime and cyber threats or internet cyber crime, Ministry of Home Affairs NCRB data, like National Crime Records Bureau data, obviously it will be there. National Crime Records Bureau data in 2017 to 19, there is an increasing internet. See, the data itself, the NCRB data report every year NCRB, National Crime Records Bureau, releases its report every year. In the data it is specifically mentioned that increase in the internet leads to the cyber crime, increase in the cyber crime. And also the increase in the cyber crime also along with sexual and hatred, like communal hatred, sexual content is also been displayed, spread. There is an increasing spread of this. So in for example, it given solid evidence that in between 2017 to 19, nearly 1 lakh cases of cybercrime has been noticed all over the India. See, such a huge cases, 1 lakh cases means 1 lakh into many maybe financial fraud, maybe phishing, maybe cyber, maybe data threat, maybe there are many types of cyber security attacks like phishing, moonlight, and also data leak. So that all we will discuss in later episodes. So nearly 1 lakh cases of cyber crimes, and also financial matters can be involved, financial threats, financial frauds. For example, Jamtara, you can see in Jharkhand, fishing capital of India, we call. There is also a series in Amazon Prime, Jamtara. like scam, how the financial scam and how the cyber security scams happen there in Jamtara. So those cases have been increasing. See, in just 2 years, 2017 to 19 itself, 1 lakh cases of cybercrime has been increased. So such a huge increase needs a compulsory regulation on this social media and also internet platforms. So that is about the India's new social media rules. Augmented reality head mounted display systems for Indian Army. See, augmented reality is nothing but basically for a virtualization. It consists of virtualization, data computing, and also it is useful in decision making. And see, our defense procurement currently is undergoing an upgradation of augmented reality head mounted display systems for our Indian Army. Basically, there are two types of categories in the defense procurement, like make 1 category and make 2 category. In make 1 category, the defense procurement 90% is funded by the government, but whereas in make 2 category, it is basically to develop a prototype stage by the defense prototype and also upgrades if any. And main thing in make 2 type category of defense procurement is the primary for it is mainly this make 2 type of procurement is primarily for the import substitution or innovation kind of thing in the defense sector. So and also no government funding is there in make 2 category. Only make 1 category defense procurement 90% is funded by the government. And in next we can call it as augmented reality head mounted display systems for our Indian Army. That is a make 2 category, and it is for basically of a type of capacity enhancement in the defense sector. So basically what are the features this augmented reality head mounted systems has? First thing is for the computation ability and also easier decision making, and next is radar thermal imaging site output. So this radar thermal imaging site output and also increased reaction time and computation support makes our decision making in the battlefield, in the field grounds, much more easier. So also night visibility is also an additional feature in this augmented reality head mounted display systems. When coming to the budget 2021 to 2022 Indian budget, how much has been the budget allocated for the Ministry of Science and Technology? Let us discuss. See, first of all, the Department of Science and Technology comes under the Ministry of Science and Technology. For the Department of Science and Technology, or for the Department of Science and Technology, nearly 15,000 crore budget has been allocated, because it is nearly a 20% increase. Nearly 20% increase has been seen in this year for the Science and Tech Ministry, and it has Department of Science and Tech, means whole. I'm talking about the whole Ministry of Science and Technology. We have Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, and Department of CSIR, Center for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and so those are the ministries comes under the Ministry of Science and Technology. And also Ministry of Earth Sciences Ministry, nearly for the Earth Sciences Ministry alone, 2000 crore, I think 1900 crore has been allocated to the Earth Science Ministry. So and because of this deep ocean exploration has been included, deep sea ocean exploration mission has been included, and also the space missions, and also the payments systems for encouraging the digital payments systems has been encouraged. And also there has been a trust given to the National Research Foundation. See, this is a unique or nodal, we can say, call it as a nodal agency, for the research activities for the research programs or research development in our India. So National Research Foundation, NRF you can call it as, in 2019 budget it was first discussed, and after that it was also discussed in the draft National Education Policy, and it is basically a funder of funds, like pool of funds, so fund of funds type of things. So it is basically the research funder, and also identified it only basically it gives priority to the national priority thrust areas. So our any country globally want to give priorities to specific or strategic researchers, so it gives thrust mainly to the national priority thrust areas, identified national priority thrust areas. And also it is an autonomous body, as already mentioned, and also the nodal agency. It can act as a mentor to the startups in researchers, mentoring, and basically it want to catalyze the R&D in the government field. and so 1500 crore also been allocated to incentivize the digital payments. 1500 crore in this budget has been released, and also there are some submissions under the Ministry of Science and Technology, like National Language Translation Mission, New Space National Language Translation Mission, and New Space India Limited (NSIL). A new branch of ISRO has been created. We can call it as a commercial arm of ISRO for the development of and procurement or outsourcing of activities of space related activities to the domestic MSMEs or the domestic startups in taking space related activities. And the first you can call it as first mission or first work of NSIL has been taken by Brazil's Amazonia 1 satellite with the help of PSLV C-51. So the PSLV C-51 and also Brazil's Amazonia satellite along with 18 other satellites have been sent via PSLV C-51 to the desired orbit, and also 4 astronauts for Gaganyaan had to train in the Russia, so that the contract has also been signed with the Russia. So those come under the space related activities. And also we have already see the term deep sea ocean mission. So basically to ground mapping of the sea level or the floor bed near the Andaman and Lakshadweep islands, and also the coastal area, to know about the seabed exploration or seabed mapping, we can call it as deep sea survey exploration, and also deep sea biodiversity conservation are the submissions of the deep sea ocean mission. Next comes the World Unani Day. See, the 11th February is celebrated as World Unani Day. See, why? What is the meaning of Unani? See, first thing we will discuss what is in news. Why the Unani is in news? Because of the World Unani Day, it was held the virtual national conference on Unani medicine. So in that the main identified player or an institution that supports this virtual conference is Central Council for Research in Unani Medicine. So it undertaken the National Conference on Unani Medicine. Basically this 11th February World Unani Day is celebrated to mark the birth anniversary or the birthday of Hakim Ajmal Khan. He is a great Unani scholar during the 19th century. During the, we can call it 20th century, during our British independence time, or we can call it as during the transition phase between the British and Mughal Empire, exactly like that 19th or 20th century. So on the birth of the Hakim Ajmal Khan, we celebrate, he is a great Unani scholar, Hakim Ajmal Khan. So on the birth anniversary of the Hakim Ajmal Khan, we celebrate this day as a World Unani Day. See, there are some principles of the Unani medicine system, likewise Ayurveda and modern science, modern scientific method. Every method has some its own principles. So the principles of the Unani system are basically the 4 humors in our body. That is, our body is made up of 4 humors, or we can call it as 4 temperaments or 4 elements, we can call it as. So what are that? The Unani 4 principles of Unani system or 4 humors are Dam, blood, that is Dam is present in the blood, and Balgam is nothing but pleam, and Safra, yellow bile, and Sauda, black bile. So these 4 ingredients or the 4 humors are make up the body. The amount of the variation in each one is the variation or the composition of each of the following humor or temperament gives the different qualities and the different shape and healthiness of a person's body. So those are some ancient text. Because of the ancient text, this type of philosophy, or we can call it as a pharmacology, has been developed, Unani. So basically 4 humors: Dam, Balgam, Safra, and Sauda. Dam is in blood, Balgam, pleam, Safra, yellow bile, and Sauda, black bile. And it is mainly similar to the Ayurvedic 3 doshas. 3 doshas means the human body can consist of 3 dosha theory of Ayurveda. This 3 dosha theory has also tells us about the Kapha, Vata, Pitta. So these are about Ayurveda. See, in-depth details in the later episodes. We can discuss this in the later episodes. Kapha, Vata, Pitta of the Ayurveda. This is basically belongs to the Ayurvedic 3 dosha theory. It is similar. This Unani 4 humors of our human body is similar to the Ayurveda 3 doshas of Kapha, Vata, Pitta. And basically if we look at the history of the Unani, a Greek. It was first originally originated in the Greece. Greece, I think you all know the famous name Hippocrates. So the unani was first discovered, first invented, or you can first originated in the Greece, and the Hippocrates made a compilation of all the principles and diagnosis and treatment in unani. The Hippocrates, he nearly belonged to the 460 or 450 to 350 BCE. So Hippocrates was the first originate. First he compiled all the unani texts, and in 11th century it was obviously with the help of the travel, trade, and also the commerce that is there between our Persians, Greece and Persians, Arabs, and also the Hindu Kush, from the Hindu Kush to India. So all the trade route, with the help of this trade happening between the Persian and the India, we in the 11th century know about the Persians and Greeks bought this unani to India. Basically we call it as Hakims. Hakims are basically the unani scholars, or we can call it as physicians in Arabic or Persian word. So Ajmal, in that Hakim Ajmal Khan is an Ayurvedic and Unani scholar. He also established in Delhi Ayurveda and Unani Tibia College. He established it in Delhi, Hakim Ajmal Khan. So he was an Arab Persian who came to India and bought this Unani medicine. And Hindustani Dawkhana he also established in Delhi in 1916. So that is all about this unani, and his founder, his spreader, mainly the preacher, mainly famous physician, unani physician in India, Hakim Ajmal Khan. So that is about unani. And next thing is detailed genome of genomic map of malaria vector. See, basically why we need a genome map of malaria vector. See, malaria is also causing to know about the reproduction cycle, and also the life cycle of the bacteria that is present inside the mosquitoes, and both the transmission side as well as the generation or replica side. So we will so basically, to analyze which gene causes which activity, or which gene causes which type of transmission, transmission specific or transmission redundant. See, because the bacteria is present in the mosquito, and the mosquito does not affect from that bacteria. It will basically act as a host to the bacteria. But even though it acts as a host, there is no symbiotic relation between the bacteria and mosquito. So in this we discuss clearly about in the genomic map. If we analyze the genomic map of the malaria vector, that is a mosquito, female Anopheles mosquito, we can able to know the genetic control strategies of the disease transmission. So basically, to get the genetic control strategies of this disease transmission, the Tata Institute of Genetics and Society, TIGS we call, both the Tata Institute of Genetics and Society along with Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotech. So these two institutes has developed a detailed genomic map of malaria vector to control the transmission strategies. We also use here, see, directly in studying the genomic map, we never analyze it in a isolation, or in complete isolation we cannot analyze the genomic vector. We use a particular type of gene editing tool called CRISPR-Cas9. So we use the CRISPR-Cas9 to cut the individual part of the required genome and analyze it in detail in the laboratories. So with the help of this CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tool, we make the help of this tool and analyze the total entire genomic vector of the malaria vector. Also, in the previous, this idea is not a new. It has already many research has been conducted, and also sufficient ample genomes from the malaria vector has been collected. But even though the genome has been collected, the mapping additional, because of its evolutionary process, a new additional genomes have been evolved, that is such as antimicrobial resistance and fungicidal resistant. So many have been developed. So newly upgraded genomes of the malaria vector are like Anopheles stephensi genome. This Anopheles stephensi, these populations are in increase in nowadays. So including all the entire genome map of malaria vector along with the newly upgraded Anopheles stephensi genome, the study has been conducted. See, this Anopheles stephensi genome is present in Africa, Asia, And what is the main problem of these Anopheles stephensi populations are, it is insecticide resistant. So if you keep any insecticides or mosquito repeller or malaria anti malaria prevention strategies, this does not work upon the Anopheles stephensi genome, because this Anopheles stephensi genome has an insecticide resistant mutation that is present in this. So because of this insecticide resistant mutation, Anopheles stephensi genome is we can call it as a new threat of malaria, a new threat to the rise of malaria carrying vector. So but we have our world, and also the mainly India, has an ambitious target of elimination of entire malaria elimination in India by 2030. So to achieve the target, such studies are required. So this is all about the detailed genomic map of malaria vector. And also mainly the point is the study is mainly focused on the genomic mapping of Anopheles stephensi genome. And next is National Ayush Mission. See, Ayush is nothing but it is a combination of sub ministries. Initially there was another ministry for a separate Ayurveda and separate homeopathy, but now in I think in 2014 government clubbed all the ministries into an Ayush ministry. Ayush is nothing but Ayurveda, yoga, and naturopathy, Unani, Siddha and homeopathy. This all comes under the Ayush ministry. So National Ayush Mission, what actually this means? See, our traditional medicine or traditional medical activities must be preserved, and also generations to generations the knowledge that we get from the Ayurveda or the ancient medical practices must be preserved, and it should be preserved for our future generations. And also integration is required with the modern medicine can cure the diseases, there is no doubt, but along with the modern medicine, the integration of the ancient medicine medicine knowledge must be required. So basically the main goal of National Ayush Mission is to integrate the Ayush factor in the modern scientific field or modern medicine. So this National Ayush Mission is basically centrally sponsored scheme, and what it requires is integration, as I mentioned, integration with the modern science facilities or wellness centers, or like co-location of Ayush facilities near the primary healthcare center and community healthcare centers, and also the community healthcare centers, and also the district hospitals. So basically all the Ayush facilities should also be available similar to that of all the modern medicine, like pharmacy, like any medical shop, chemist, druggist, you find many druggist centers in the cities, and you will find that in every street you find a pharmacy. So similar to that practice, we must evolve, or we must promote the Ayush medicine of our Indian. See, we don't say that entire Ayush is of our India, it belongs to India, but many of the patents like Ayurveda which has an Indian origin, which can be a patent potential in medicine, can be used. So the promotion of Ayush can also act as a soft power in Indian diplomacy. So this National Ayush Mission basically tries to promote the Ayush in the modern science, and like I have already mentioned, upgradation and integration of the Ayush hospitals, and it also gives an promotion to the state UG and PG higher education institutions in learning, and also in promoting courses for the modern medicine students, and increase the cooperatives in building drugs relating to this Ayush. See, many companies are mainly focused on their profit margin, and thus they follow the drug which is cheaply available and also high in demand. So basically the motivation of the people buying the medicine basically comes from the supply. If the supply is not there, people show less tenderness towards buying the Unani medicine because of its costly. So to increase the cooperatives in making drugs and improving the facilities of the Ayush, and also drug testing laboratories, Ayush wellness centers, and increase of medicinal plantations of relating to the Ayush. See, everything is a forward and backward linkage. If Ayush is not a single topic, it also includes economy, supply and demand side. It also includes backward linkages with agriculture. So every specific type of linkages is available with the Ayush mission. And also increase in medicinal plantation as already discussed, and also dispensaries coexisting, co-location with the dispensaries, Unanis, and also to public health belongs to the, as we know that public health belongs to the state subject. Any further promotion or development in the health sector needs the cooperation from the states. So that is also a challenge need to be addressed. And also we have a conservation, development and sustainable management of medicinal plants, a what we call a goal or a target set by the conservation, development and sustainable management of the medicinal plants. So this can also be integrated with the Ayush mission. And this conservation, development and conservation, development and sustainable management of this medicinal plants is central sector scheme, that is 100% funded by the center. And this is basically a project assistance fund to the manufacturing agencies, to the joint forest management committees, one panchayats, self-help groups, warehousing, markets, marketing and so on. So it is basically want to promote or incentives, it provides incentives to the conservation strategies of the medicinal plants. So it is basically an assistance program, and channelize the supply and demand and harvest, increase of capacity building. So it looks into all these factors. And basically the Ayush is previously called, as we discussed it in 2014, it has been integrated as an Ayush. Previously it was called as Department of Indian System of Medicine and Homeopathy. So this is all about the National Ayush Mission. And next is Hunter syndrome. See, what actually is the Hunter syndrome? Hunter syndrome is basically we call it as MPS2 Hunter syndrome. What is MPS2? It is mucopolysaccharidosis 2. Mucopolysaccharidosis 2. It is an we will discuss step by step Hunter syndrome. First of all, by looking into the name, what we see, Hunter syndrome. So when our olden ancestors used to hunt, they first of all they have to have the knowledge of plants, or they have to have the knowledge of edible and non-edible part of both animal as well as plant. So every cell, plant cell or animal cell, cannot easily digest by our body. So this Hunter syndrome indicates the mucopolysaccharidosis, that is unable to digest some particular type of cells, or unable to process or unable to break down particular type of cells, or this MPS2 is mucopolysaccharidosis 2. And basically it is of hereditary, that is from generations to generation, from the family origin it transfers or it develops. Mostly it affects boys. And what actually this mucopolysaccharidosis 2 is, it can't break down a kind of sugar in bones, that is a sugar that is developed in the bones, skin and other tissues. So it cannot break down the sugar tissue, because it does not have, so if it does not break down a sugar molecule, it should be deficient in something, or more excess of something. So the deficiency in a kind of enzyme that causes the breakdown suffrage of the human body, because of the sugar present in the bones, skin and other tissues. So what is that enzyme that is not present, that causes this Hunter syndrome, is iduronate 2-sulfatase enzyme. This iduronate 2-sulfatase enzyme is absent in our body. If this iduronate 2-sulfatase enzyme is absent in our body, it causes mucopolysaccharidosis 2 of attenuated type. There are two types of active and attenuated type. So this mucopolysaccharidosis 2 is an hereditary, and because of the not presence of iduronate 2-sulfatase enzyme. And basically this Hunter syndrome has no cure, and only treatment to the symptoms is there for this. So that is all about this. See, why it is in news? Because a family has requested to the High Court regarding the payment for the treatment, because they are unable to bear the treatment cost. It appealed to the High Court, and the High Court has given the order that to bear this once in a decade, or a very rare disease kind of thing, this Hunter syndrome. Because of this Hunter syndrome, the High Court gave a judgment to bear the cost by the designated authorities, to bear the cost of this treatment of Hunter syndrome, that is because of the non-presence of iduronate 2-sulfatase enzyme. And the Vigyan Jyoti program, as already discussed, it is basically to promote, Vigyan Jyoti program is basically to promote the women in STEM sciences, in science and technology, engineering and mathematics, to adopt it as a career for the girl students in both engineering job as well as career and research aspects, R&D aspects. So basically Vigyan Jyoti program is started on 11th February. What is the special of 11th February? We already seen it is in Unani Day. 11th February is also International Day of Women in Science. So on this International Day of Women in Science in 11th February, this Vigyan Jyoti program has been launched. basically to develop or nurture the career skills in science, and women scientist schemes has also been there. There are many sub schemes under this Vigyan Jyoti program, or we can call it as coordination between the programs. Vigyan Jyoti, like women scientist scheme and Indo-US fellowship for women in STEM program, WISTEM we can call it as, and Curie program. In Curie program, the interesting thing is that in Curie program, the consolidation of university research for innovation and excellence for the women is being taken up in the university. So in a women universities, a university research for innovation and excellence is being carried out, that is Curie program. So after this Curie program, we have a Gati framework. Gati framework is nothing but gender advancement in technology, in transforming the institutions. So institutions removing the gender parity in every stage of scientific in the STEM, removing the gender parity in the science, technology and engineering and mathematics framework. So Gati framework or gender advancement for transforming institutions to remove the gender, to promote the gender equality has been undertaken. And also Department of Science and Technology of AI labs in women universities has also an interesting scheme that is being brought by the Department of Science and Technology. So that is about the Vigyan Jyoti program. And coming to the ISRO MOU with the geospatial alternate Google Maps. See, in the first topic itself, we have see the deregulation or liberalization of the geospatial sector. So ISRO has signed an MOU with CE Info Systems. See, this CE Info Systems own Map My India app, that is also related to the geospatial sector. So this ISRO has signed an MOU with a private firm in which field, in the geospatial field, what to perform an alternative Google Maps. Like Google Maps is basically of it uses GPS, US based navigation service, but our Indian owned Navic, this uses the Indian owned Navic to our domestic and also the foreign users for the demand to serve the purpose of our Indians. So an MOU has been signed with the CE Info Systems like Map My India to develop the geospatial apps that is used by the firms and startups, and holistic geospatial solutions to provide services like holistic geospatial solutions like Navic, APIs, Map My India, Bhuvan and Vedas, Mosdak. So these are all the elements. Like Bhuvan portal we have already seen in the previous episode, Vedas portal, Mosdak portal. These are the things like Navic, navigation with Indian constellation. Basically it is our Indian own navigation system constellation of 7 or 8 satellites constellation. IRNSS, Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, that is 7 satellites. Out of that 4 are geosynchronous satellites and 3 are geostationary, and 1 is for message oriented satellite systems. So that is all about the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System. So using this IRNSS to give thrust to the geospatial sector, to the startups, our ISRO has been signing an MOU, and also liberalization of the geospatial sector has been taken up. Like Vedas, we have already discussed. Vedas is in short I will say Vedas is nothing but visualization of earth observation data and archival systems. So basically for a research and academic research purpose, this Vedas can be useful. Visualization of earth observation data and archival system. And similar lines, Mosdak, like meteorological and oceanographic satellite data archival center. This is basically, it is a center, or we can call it as a data repository, geospatial data repository of all the ISRO missions, all the ISRO planetary or we can call it as geospatial sector settings. All the meteorological missions of the ISRO has been the depository. All the data is stored in this mission, meteorological and oceanographic satellite data and archival center, MOSDAC, and basically to promote the indigenous mapping solutions for Indians. It is all about the ISRO geospatial alternative mapping technology. And also, what are the laws present in our India regarding to tackle the cyber world? See, the main till now it has been not in consensus of the international platforms, because international platforms are still in bringing clarity to find out the solution or a global framework in setting to deal up with the cyber security laws. But Indian government in the meantime temporarily using the Information Technology Act of 2000 or 2020 recent. So Information Technology Act 2000 has been used extensively by the Indian government to promote or to regulate the cyberspace or digital space. We have already discussed in the previous episodes, like Information Technology Act intermediaries have a what safe harbor under section 79 or section 69 of the IT Act, and intermediaries are defined in section 69 of the IT Act 2000. And this basically deals with the four purposes: to protect the sovereignty, defense, security, and international relations, or the friendly relations between our countries, and also to maintain the public order. So that is all about the section 69 of the IT Act. So extensively we use for the cybercrime this IT Act, but still a policy is yet to adopt in by the parliament. And we also seen safe harbor protection to the intermediary platforms of social media, like section 79 of the IT Act 2000, and safe harbor protection for intermediary. It provides section 79 of the IT Act, that is no legal burden on the intermediary for the content it hosts. And also you can solidify this section 79 of this IT Act in Shreya Singhal versus Union of India 2015 case. Article 19, it talks about Article 19, and also it supports section 79 of the IT Act, because if we promote the safe harbor, and if we do not promote the safe harbor, obviously all the content that is been posted, it automatically gets disappeared because of the privacy policies of the company. So to protect the privacy, or to protect the freedom of speech of the people, Article 19, in Supreme Court in the Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case 2015, it has upheld the safe harbor protection for the intermediaries. And if and only if the court mediated order has been taken by the if and only if the court mediated order is given to the intermediary to disclose the details of the persons, or to scrutinize the complaint, so only in that cases the safe harbor protection cannot be used. Otherwise the safe harbor protection can be continued to use. So that is about section 79 of the IT Act. And also we have discussed about the Shreya Singhal versus Union of India 2015 case, so which talks about Article 19 protection, and all these are the interlinked with the section 79 of the IT Act. So these are the laws regarding the cyber world in India. And coming to the lithium, see why the lithium is in use. We have reserves found in the Karnataka. There is a report by the Geological Survey of India that we have some traces of reserves samples found in the Karnataka region. And basically lithium is used for lithium ion batteries, lubricating the grease in space industry, and also in the aerospace industries. And because of its high energy the high energy additives to the rocket propellants, lithium gives an high energy additives to the rocket propellants in safely mixing both hydrogen and oxygen in its propellant engine. And also raw materials that are required for the thermonuclear fusion, because of this use in electronics and this all, the main use, or the major, we can call it as a strategic use, is in the nuclear field. Like lithium can act as a converter to tritium. See, during a fusion reaction, hydrogen, single isotope of hydrogen should be converted into get fused to form a tritium with mass 3 and atomic number 1, H13. So because of this tritium, lithium is used in conversion of that hydrogen single atom hydrogen to the normal hydrogen to the radioisotope of hydrogen, tritium. So this can be used in the fusion reaction, because as a raw material for the thermonuclear reaction, especially in the fusion reactions. So because of this purpose, lithium mining, or because of this nuclear purpose, lithium mining and the lithium exploration, whole job of this lithium exploration comes under the Atomic Minerals Directorate, AMD. So AMD has the sole responsibility. Because of this, lithium is classified as a prescribed substance under the Atomic Energy Act 1962. And so AMD plus Geological Survey of India does all the mineral explorations in our country. But particularly of the lithium, when coming to the lithium, Geological Survey of India does nothing. Whole activities of exploration, from exploration to the end product, all the powers will be there with the Atomic Energy Department, Atomic Energy Directorate, AMD. So if you look at the other metals or other minerals that are explored by the AMD or Atomic Minerals Directorate, we have lithium, beryllium, niobium, tantalum, thorium 90, and uranium 92, and rare earth metals of actinide series, not lanthanide series, but only of actinide series, and that one. and this lithium also, these are the following minerals that support nuclear power program in our country. So because it supports the nuclear power program of country, it is under the Department of Atomic Space and Department of Atoms, like AMD, Atomic Minerals Directorate. So it is all about the lithium and its reserves. What about the ethylene glycol? Why it is in use? See, ethylene glycol is used as an antifreeze. You all know. What is the purpose of antifreeze? To not to make it into an antifreeze. Anti plus freeze, that is to not to make any liquid to get into the freezing state. So for example, if any vehicle has a fuel, if in a cold season or any due to some unwanted circumstances, what if during the unwanted circumstances, what if the fuel in the vehicle gets condensed, or it forms as a ice? So that's very tricky, right? So we want to be the fuel in a liquid form to ignite fastly, and also to generate the thrust required for the engine to perform. So for that purpose it should be in a liquid state. So to prevent the fuel or prevent any liquid from becoming into a solid, or nothing but from becoming into freeze, or becoming a freeze, we use this antifreeze, ethylene glycol. Chemical formula CH2OH taken twice, ethylene glycol. IUPAC name ethane 1,2 diol. You can OH group in first and second carbon with a single hydrogen carbon OH group, and OH group double bond with oxygen OH group, and next so that is the thing. So OH group, not alcohol group, ethane 1,2 diol, IUPAC name. So we can call it as ethylene glycol, CH2OH. That can be used as an antifreeze in automobile antifreeze, hydraulic brakes, fluids, paints, fillants, pistons, cosmetics, pharmaceutical use. So many uses are there of this ethylene glycol. Recently in news because an American military agent has drunk this ethylene glycol. Because of this property of ethylene glycol, it does not have any taste, sweet taste. It has sweet taste and transparent. It does not have any color. It is sweet taste. It gives an euphoria of drinking a wine. So there is a news that this US military person has drank the antifreeze, and the symptoms like diarrhea, kidney failure are the common symptoms if you drink an antifreeze. So that is all about the antifreeze, ethylene glycol. Antifreeze is also used as a de-icing agent, sweet odorless liquid, broken compounds. See, ethylene glycol itself is not the dangerous, but when it enters the gut, it broken down into certain toxic compounds and affect the central nervous system and basically heart and kidneys. So that is all about the antifreeze, ethylene glycol, CH2OH taken twice. Okay. Next and the final topic is composite raw materials. See, in the name itself indicates composite raw minerals. The minerals in the composite form. That is why it is in use is Hindustan Aeronautical Limited plus Midhani company has formed an MOU for the production of this composite raw minerals. See, I will tell in glance about this composite raw minerals. A mineral A with chemical properties A1 and physical properties A1, physical properties A2. These mineral A, when it is mixed with a B with the chemical properties B1 and physical properties B2, when these two minerals are mixed, it forms a third mineral, composite mineral, so with chemical properties different, chemical properties C1 and physical properties C2. This chemical property and physical properties of the obtained result C is different from that of B and A. So unique and distinct. So that is the main unique feature of the composite raw materials. It does not have the quality and the chemical properties of the parents. That is a feature of the composite raw materials. Basically the most purpose of this composite raw materials are basically the four uses are there, four industries you can call it as, like reinforced concrete in masonry, composite wood in plywood, reinforced plastics in polymer and fiberglass, like masonry, reinforced concrete and composite wood as a plywood, and reinforced plastics as a polymer and fiberglass, and also in ceramic matrix composites have been prepared. See why this all being used. It is used in the light combat aircraft in the defense, HAL Tejas light combat aircraft, Tejas and Cheetah. So these are the in helicopters, altitude light advanced light helicopters. We have our Hawk advanced light helicopters, Cheetah, and LCH, light combat helicopter, and light ultra utility helicopter. Now we import that all, but it can have a potential to maintain all the steel frame with the help of this composite raw materials that is done by the Hindustan Aeronautical Limited as well as Midhani. Midhani is basically an exploration field. So HAL, when it forms an MOU with the Midhani to extract these raw materials, it will be a great advantage to our domestic manufacturing. And also, why the composite raw materials, why we favor the composite raw materials is to decrease the imports, and these are less expensive if we prepare our own self, and lighter and stronger. So these are the futures of the composite raw materials. So this is all for this session, and for the next more topics, please subscribe to our channel, and for more science talks, subscribe to our channel, and we will discuss the more other science talks in the future episodes. Thank you.